Good morning. My name is Greg Penner. I am a worship associate here. It's lovely to see you all today. In the dream, there was a hulking, ominous figure standing at the foot of my bed. He was tall and broad and had a slow-moving, shambling energy. He wore a long, heavy coat covered with hundreds of small barbed hooks, each hook carrying a small weight. Some hooks were tiny, like a fishing weight. Some were the size of baseballs. No one weight was problematic, but their cumulative weight was staggering, hence his heavy, lumbering presence. This was 4 or 5 years ago, a time of great transformation for me. I don't usually have dreams I find meaningful, so this one stood out. The message was clear too, which was also unusual for me. He was me, and the weights hooked into me were all of the emotional injuries I carried. I carried them because I wasn't good at releasing them. I held on to stuff, shelved it, stashed it away. This gave me a feeling of relief, but this dream was telling me I was not free of them. They were hooked into me, and I still carried their heavy weight. For most of my life, I've had a kind of hierarchy of feelings, from ones that were easy to recognize and express to others that were not. Happiness was an easy one. Anxiety, sadness, fear, a little harder. Loneliness, longing, hurt, shame were even harder. I used to think anger was the hardest for me to own, but now I know it's grief. Grief feels so big. The idea of surrendering to it feels overwhelming, like falling into a hole so deep I won't ever be able to climb out. Intellectually, I know that's not true. Still, grief sits on the highest shelf, out of sight and out of reach. But just because I can't find my grief doesn't mean my grief won't find me. More and more, deep emotions rise up in me, heavy, aching, longing, missing, wanting. Tears will well up, and when my partner, Pam, asks if I'm crying, I can only croak out an answer. I used to try to hide this from her, out of embarrassment or shame or confusion about why it was happening. Now I see it as a gift, the result of a deepening sense of connection to my emotions, my comfort with harder feelings, a more accepting stance towards myself. In February, it will be 16 years since my brother Bart died of suicide. I've never really grieved his death. At that time, I was pretty disconnected from my feelings, especially the bigger ones. Faced with the enormity of that loss, I locked it down, boxed it up, and put it away. That allowed me to function at a pretty high level in a rough time, which was very helpful. But the grief is still there, and it has been seeping out more and more. I've spoken before about how the Beatles song Let It Be opened a channel to that grief. In the last verse, Paul McCartney sings, "And when the night is cloudy, there is still a light that shines on me. Shine until tomorrow, let it be." Bart could not find that light. could not shine for one more day. That line and that image still brings me to tears. I've recently been infatuated with another song called Play a Train Song by the late Todd Snyder. It's about a big, boozy, boisterous man, kind of like Bart. I love it, and I find it cathartic to sing. I'd probably sung it 100 times learning how to play it. But one day, it landed differently, heavier, sadder. When I got to one line at the end, I knew why. The final verse goes, "In the television blizzard lights, we looked around his place. We saw him cold there on the sofa, a little smile upon his face. And though I tried with all of my sadness, somehow I just could not weep for a man who looked to me like he died laughing in his sleep, singing a train song." Bart should have died laughing in his sleep. And the fact that he didn't still breaks my heart. Bart loved music. I love music. And I'm grateful that music has the ability to slice me open and bring these feelings to the surface. Now, when I sing this song, it's a celebration of Bart, a connection to my lost brother, and to a deeper part of myself.
Our reading today is Without You from James Cruz, who writes, "With my husband gone for a week, the silence in the house began to feel like its own entity, fearful animal that followed me from room to room. I began to notice every moment of the light, looking up from my desk to find the pink ink of dawn pressing through the wind-plucked maples, or stopping on a walk to snap a photo of the noon sun held like a ball of fire in the hands of branches, where a porcupine had nestled its prickly body and gone to sleep. Nights came on too soon, stretching out like an endless strip of sand. I walked alone beside the sea of my worries. Without you, I said out loud, and then had to stop myself from practicing for some future moment I could not even bear to conjure. My first wife and I broke up in May of 2008 after 11 years together and 2 children. We'd been in couples counseling for a year, so it was not necessarily a surprise. Our kids were 6 and 9, and I was in seminary. So we continued to share a home for the next 2 years. And so it was a total shock to me when 7 months later, in January of 2009, when I was in Chicago for my seminary classes, I kind of fell apart. I grieved this messy, sobbing, blubbery grief. It completely surprised me. I had been doing fine for months. I didn't regret the decision. But between being the one to make the decision, so anticipatory grief, and holding everything together for my family, it meant that I hadn't allowed myself to really feel the loss of this relationship that I had assumed would last forever. And when it finally hit, it hit hard. Like all of us, I have had many losses since then. My mother, who was watching football with my dad until she wasn't. My mother-in-law, whose passing was a blessing, although still sad. My niece, who died unexpectedly at 42. Another divorce, and 3 much beloved pets. And then there are the congregants. So many beloved congregants. So many people I knew and loved and had the honor of helping you memorialize and remember. But grief has never shocked me quite as much as that first time, and I think it's because I've learned to deal with it a little better, mostly by acknowledging it. Grief is a slippery thing. There is the immediate grief, of course, the sometimes keening, shocking feel of sudden loss. The almost numb feeling when a loss you have been anticipating for a long time finally arrives. But also that sudden, almost knocks your legs out from underneath you feeling when a loss sneaks up on you and you reel in the shock of a sense memory, of a smell or a taste. This happened recently when I washed the sheets that my dog Alfie slept on. The hole in your chest when someone is missing from the Thanksgiving table. Or the grief of losing part of your identity, or the loss of what you had hoped for. James Cruz, the author of our reading today, wrote, "We often hear it said that the depth of our grief is a measure of how much we loved and still love. While this is true," he continues, "I believe that our grief, if we allow ourselves to feel it, is also a measure of the depth of our own aliveness. We might not have invited the pain of loss to our table, but if it is here, that too is a miracle, rough blessing over this one life. Even missing my husband, even fretting over a possible power outage, or feeling annoyed by the roar of a neighbor's leaf blower is evidence that I am still here, living and breathing and feeling it all." Grief indeed is a sign that we have loved. It is also, as Cruz writes, a sign that we are still alive. So how can we live with our grief? And how can we use it as a sign of our own aliveness? And how can we help others through their own grief, not through platitudes, but with concrete actions? Jancy Dunn writes for the New York Times about anticipatory grief, the kind you have when you're contemplating divorce, or when a loved one is on hospice, or when your beloved pet is clearly approaching the end. The first thing Dunn suggests is to simply acknowledge that what you are feeling is indeed grief. Naming what you're experiencing can, in fact, help you cope. In some losses, knowing in advance can help by encouraging us to have the kind of conversations that experts say can be truly helpful. Dr. Frances O'Connor says you can use a period of anticipatory grief as an opportunity to figure out if there are any issues you need to work through, such as things that have been left unsaid. When someone is in hospice care, Dr. O'Connor said, they are encouraged to have closure conversations, getting a chance to say, "I love you," "Thank you," "I'm sorry," "Please forgive me," "I forgive you," and "Goodbye." Research suggests that survivors experience less depression after a death when they have these types of meaningful communication. And we have heard today how hard it can be when a death absolutely takes you by surprise and you don't have the chance to have those conversations. It can also be tricky when the person who is dying is uninterested in acknowledging that they are, in fact, dying. I know a few people who have really struggled with the fact that their loved ones are dying, and they really don't want to talk about that reality at all. It is so hard for us Unitarian Universalists who want to process everything. But the truth is, it's a bit like the circles of care. The patient is the person in the center. Each person falls somewhere in a circle outside of the center. A spouse, a child or parent or a sibling might be in that second circle out. A friend, a cousin, a coworker might be in the next circle out. The rule is care goes in and you dump out. Well, you can have those end-of-life conversations with the identified patient if they are willing to have them. You don't get to share with the patient how hard it is to have them be sick and all the stuff it's bringing up for you. If you are a less close friend, if you're an acquaintance, you don't get to dump all of your struggles on their partner. This doesn't mean you don't get to talk to anyone. That's the reason for the dump out section. Obviously, you don't want to share confidential stuff if the patient doesn't want you to, but you do and you should find your own people to talk with and share with. Your feelings matter too, but it's important that you share them with folks that can hold them, not with someone who is grieving more than you are. Dr. Alan Wolfelt, the director of the Center for Loss and Life Transition in Fort Collins, Colorado, notes of anticipatory grief that constantly worrying about the future can be demoralizing. Don't spend more time and energy in your imagination than in the present. And Dr. O'Connor agreed, adding, it's in the present moment that we get to have connection and compassion and joy and love. And they both note that while you're in the midst of anticipatory grief, try and cultivate hope by looking for interests and activities and people that make you feel optimistic. Dr. Wolfelt said, and then put an activity on your schedule every day, whether it's phoning a friend or sharing a home-cooked meal with someone you love, or praying, or walking. Hope keeps you going, and it balances the darkness and confusion. It is also good to realize that anticipatory grief doesn't mean that you will get all of your grieving done in advance. It can make it easier, but it probably won't make it all go away. People often wonder how to deal with people in grief. It makes us uncomfortable, and we don't want to say the wrong thing. We worry about reminding someone of their loss. And here's the secret, they haven't forgotten. It's not like they're just going on with their day and you'll send them a text and they're like, oh, damn right. Yeah, I forgot that. Experts say that platitudes is something to worry about. They can be incredibly irritating. Oftentimes, the best thing you can do is just show up and listen. Sometimes I say that the most pastoral thing I can say is just, that sucks. I'm so very sorry. Because the secret is there usually isn't a right thing to say. But a quiet presence can be incredibly helpful. Sharing memories you have of the one who is gone can also be really comforting. Oftentimes, we want to help. We want to offer some concrete action to a loved one who is grieving. When experts or writers gather reflections from folks who have gone through grief, they frequently say that, tell me what you need, or let me know if I can do anything. Well, well-intentioned just means that the person who is grieving gets paralyzed because they have to come up with something, and that's hard when you're in the middle of grief. Concrete offers with something that you are willing to do with specifics are the most helpful. Hey, can I bring you a meal on Tuesday? Can I come do some laundry for you or clean your bathroom? Would it be helpful if I got the kids out of the house for a couple of hours? Offer to pet sit if someone has to go out of town. But the crucial thing is, whatever you offer, follow through on it. Someone wrote that after their dad had died, someone promised to take their kids for pedicures and ice cream and then never followed through, which made their kids hurt. A good old-fashioned card with a memory about the loved one will almost certainly be treasured. But if you aren't someone who writes cards, text. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Whatever kind of acknowledgement you make will be welcome, as long as you avoid platitudes. Please do not say, I know none of you would say this, God doesn't give you anything you can't handle. But you might say, you have so much to be grateful for. Or, you're so strong, you'll get through this. They will probably eventually figure that out, but hearing it when you're actively grieving is not very helpful. The experts can tell us to cultivate hope, but hearing that from someone not in the middle of the messy grief that we are in isn't something most of us want to hear because it just comes across as minimizing. Grief happens in so many different ways, and what can be helpful varies dramatically from person to person. My sister and her husband, who lost their daughter, keep her favorite scent from Bath and Body Works around their house. Other people talk to their dad in Home Depot, or feel a visit when they see a particular kind of bird or butterfly. Some folks keep an article of clothing. One of my mother-in-law's shirts is in my closet, and I often wear one of my mom's sweaters. There is not a wrong way to grieve. It usually lasts longer than we expect it to. And it almost always lasts longer than society expects it will. It does not fit neatly within the 3 to 5 days bereavement leave allotted. On the morning that our congregant Morena died, I thought, damn it. This is the problem with loving so many people. Losing them hurts. And later that day, I called my own former minister so I could take care of myself, so I could be there for her family and provide that care in. Sometimes, something I don't think we talk about enough is how losses compound. How the most painful part of aging is losing so many friends and loved ones. How each loss adds up. About the need for gentleness with ourselves when we don't grieve in the prescribed order and at the prescribed time. How sometimes we will fall apart because we don't get our breakfast sandwich, and it has nothing to do with the breakfast sandwich at all. Some 20 years ago, when I was working in clinical pastoral education, I had a patient who was in the ICU. He was scared and he was trying to understand why. But as we talked, it came out that his girlfriend had died in the ICU several years earlier. He thought he was over it. He had a new girlfriend, he had moved on, he had a very demanding job. He didn't sleep well or take good care of himself. He hadn't fully dealt with his own grief. And it's going to pop up again when we're in the same situation. Because grief, if we do not deal with it, has a tendency to come back and bite us in the backside. And as we enter into this winter season of darkness and quiet, of Advent, of waiting, of rest, I invite you to see if there is any unfinished business of grieving that you might need to do. Our grief is, as James Cruz says, a measure of our own aliveness, evidence that we are still here, living and breathing and feeling it all. Don't you shush her. That's super helpful right now, frankly. We are still here, aren't we, Penelope? Living and breathing and feeling it all. Amen. May it be so, and blessed be.